Good morning. Today we are going to discuss Edit lazy annotation from Spring Boot. Before that, in Windows, you want some applications to be started when the booting is completed. For that, we will configure startup apps. When you configure these startup apps, whenever the boot load is completed, booting is completed, the Windows machine operating system try to start all these apps. Because of this, you have to wait after the booting, you have to wait few minutes so that you have more access on your computer. Otherwise, your machine is busy loading all these applications, startup applications. So to cut down this heavy load after the boot, we remove startup applications from this folder or from task manager. So the point I would like to highlight here is that you don't need some applications loaded started after the boot. You want some application to be started whenever it's needed. So if you configure apps to be loaded after the boot, you will configure here. Here it will load all the apps after the boot. System will get more load. Sometimes apps you may not need will be loaded. That is not a good approach. So today the topic we are going to discuss similar to this from Spring point of view. There is something called lazy annotation. The lazy annotation in Spring Boot is used to mark a bean for lazy initialization, which means whenever you configure, put lazy on the top of the component, telling the Spring Boot container that a Spring Boot container don't create this particular bean object for this bean whenever the Spring Boot started. Just create object for this class whenever I call for the bean. If you do not put lazy on the top of the class, Spring is going to load all the components, create objects, and make it available at its cache, which means if your application having 100 beans or 1000 beans, Spring is going to load all the beans and create objects for those beans and keep it available at local cache. So it's like a heavy load process. So rather loading classes dynamically before you need is kind of loading taking the CPU process. So we can cut down by using lazy. If you put lazy on the top of the component means Spring is going to create or load that bean, create object for that bean whenever it's needed only, not on the loading or starting a Spring Boot application. This particular annotation that you can use class level or member level. Two places you can use this annotation. Yeah, this particular annotation is available at org Spring Framework context annotations package. Yeah, as I said, purpose is like delaying the creation of a Spring Bean until the first accessed. Means whenever you call the bean, that time only object will be created. Otherwise, if you don't put this edit lazy, Spring is going to create object for that particular bean. So the default scope is singleton. So as we discussed before, yeah, usage. You can use edit lazy for this controllers, components, services, repository, beans. So if you put edit lazy on the top of the component means that component will be created when we access. If you put lazy on the top of service means whenever you call that service, that time that class will be loaded, object will be created and it will be available at cache. So we're telling that if you put a lazy on the top of any component is telling that Spring don't create object whenever the Spring Boot started, application started. No, create an object whenever it's needed. If I call that particular bean, create an object. If I don't call the object, don't create the particular bean. It's like a need basis. So you can use for configuration also. And on injection points, yeah, you can apply auto void and at inject also. Scope, yeah, mostly all the beans by default having a singleton bean scope. Even the singleton beans also will be lazy initiated if you put this particular annotation. Same thing can apply with for the prototype scope also. So attributes. So if you put lazy on the top of the class or member variable, instance variable, if you say lazy value equal to false means we are not using lazy. Means it's going to Spring is going to load this particular component and create object for you, make it available. When you say lazy value equal to false means having this line or no line, no lazy, same thing. But if you put lazy or lazy value equal to, both are same. So when you say lazy or value equal to true means we are telling that Spring Boot that do not create object when the application is started. Create an object when we accessed, we call that bean. That's called lazy initialization. Yeah, use cases. Same thing I said. Reduce application startup time by deferring initialization of heavy or optional beans. So yeah, this is a good approach actually. If those beans are optional, maybe we don't use it much regularly, you can have either lazy. It will be created, objects will be created whenever we need, whenever we call. If you put either lazy. So we use for this circular dependencies and conditionally load beans based on the runtime usage. Yes, because these are conditional level. Whenever we need, that time we are going to access those beans, creating objects for those beans means because of this either lazy. Uh, Two things actually. Sometimes in the Spring Boot or somewhere we read like eager instantiation or eager initialization means default. If you don't put at the lazy means it's like a eager instantiation means beans are created during the startup of application. Faster, fast access but slower startup. As I said, like a Windows example I gave you, right? Windows will be started after the boot up. It will load all the apps. It will start the app, but you get you can access the Windows machine little late. It will be slow because it will start up all the apps. Errors are detected early. Yes, if there is a problem with the beans, you get to know very early stage. But with this lazy initialization, beans are created on demand. If there are some 10 beans or 100 beans, if you put it that lazy, if you don't call those beans, maybe those beans won't be loaded, objects may not be created. It's like optional level. And application will be faster to load because optional objects beans will not be created unless we call because of either lazy. Yeah, errors will be detected a little late because lazy loading. So let's create a project and see how it will work. Create a sample project. Lazy example test Java Maven Firefly. I use JDK23. Yeah, we don't need any starters. Let's take latest Spring Boot. Okay, take a dev tools. I want to load changes dynamically. I don't want to start the application whenever there is a change. Start the application. Create a component. My controller. Let's create a constructor. As a public. Okay. Let me add a method public void get action. Okay. Nothing simple. Creating a class. Okay. Mark it as component. So this is a constructor and one action. Let me copy paste. Create one more controller. Receiver. Receiver. Okay. Okay. So okay. So let's rerun this guy. See, my controller, my receiver. Both both the components are loaded because early instantiation. So what I will do? Write lazy. Lazy for my receiver. So my receiver should not be loaded. See, my receiver didn't come because this particular constructor didn't call because of lazy. So let's do one thing, one more. I say lazy. Okay. Now this is also will vanish. Means object will not be class will not be loaded. Object will not be created. Means bins won't be created. See, both the constructor didn't load. But what I will do? Let me get this particular application context. Get bin, yes. So I'm calling this particular bin. See, this particular thing will be loaded. Rerun. See, my control is loaded. And get action also called. So this thing is loaded, this thing is called because of this line. So even there's a lazy. So lazy because it is executed and object is created only when we call because of lazy. So I will do one thing. I will remove this guy now. So now my receiver will be automatically loaded and this is going to be called because of lazy because I'm calling this particular get bin. This will be loaded automatically because it didn't provide @ lazy. And I'm even not even calling this particular bin. Even though I'm not calling, it's going to create because there is no lazy. See, my reserve is called. So this is executed first. This is executed because of lazy. Even if I say value equal to true, same. If you don't put lazy or put lazy equal to false, both are same. Restart. See, receiver executed. Technically, which means if you don't put also, don't put it also, same thing. So I do one more thing. So I will, okay, receiver, I will comment it. I would say you can have lazy annotation with @bean also. Let's see, public, get date, return date, bean, lazy also. So this will be executed when we call this particular method. So what I will do, get date. So we are having a bean with lazy with bean. Okay, I should have put this. Perfect. Rerun. Yes, see, this thing is called. So I can have here also member variable level also I can have my okay controller. I would say @automated. Yeah, this is also possible. Basically, you can have lazy with member variable also, instance variable level, or bean level also. Both are same. I mean, both can be possible.